what happened. The four of us are speakers. A couple, 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, we started having these little conversations with meeting planners and you folks and everybody. And all of a sudden, when we were having these conversations, we were like, wow, so and so meeting planners kind of worried about us, and so meeting planners kind of thinking of canceling. And then the cancellation started, and we all started to panic. But we all four looked at each other and said, why are we panicking? We're not the ones who are in the biggest trouble of all. That's our friends, the event planners. Because we realized that not only were y'all calling us to cancel, you were calling vendors to cancel. You were calling hotels to cancel. You were dealing with calls from attendees, participants, your bosses, their bosses. The chaos was insane. And we thought, how can we help you? You've been our partners for so many years in all of these projects. How can we help you? We said, well, let's do a program. Let's do a crisis program for people in crisis. So we decided to put this together, and we have put it together with four of my wonderful, amazing colleagues. Let me introduce you to one of my most favorite people in the world. Her name is Mary C. Kelly, and I love calling her Mary C. Kelly. She goes by Mary Kelly sometimes, but to us, she's Mary C. Kelly. And I love her so much, I admire her so much, that I will talk to my husband and say, well, Mary C. Kelly is going here, and Mary C. Kelly is doing that, and Mary C. Kelly has her stuff together, and Mary C. Kelly, la, la, la. She's one of the most intelligent people I have ever met. She's got PhDs and economy degrees, and people who like economists say that she's one of the best, and she does all kinds of things. She does a lot with leadership and draws on her history of being a Navy commander, a whole bunch. But more than that, the nerd runs deep in this friend of mine because she was president of the Latin Club in high school. Not the Latin Dancing Club, the Latin Club. So with that, I want Dr. Mary C. Kelly to take over and talk to us about leading in crisis.
Thank you, Beth, and thanks for putting this together. When all of this started, many people were in fact panicking. And I'm like, wait a second, now is when we actually need leadership. So folks, it's really easy to be a leader when things are going well. When you've got plenty of money, plenty of resources, plenty of people, and everything is going swimmingly well, it is very, very easy to be a leader and call yourself a leader. But I gotta tell you, it's when times get tough that people actually need real leadership. And that is where I think we are now. So the other night, I was doing a program called How to Triage Your Time and Get Control of Your Life with your email. And they said, hey, can you give us some tips also about, how do we get through this? And I said, you betcha, because this situation we have right now reminds me a little bit of what happened after 9/11. And at 9/11, I was in command of an organization in Hawaii. And I was sleeping when the phone call came. My husband answered the phone and he said, hey, baby, I'm sorry, I got to turn on the TV. And it was Hawaii, so it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. And we watched as the second tower got hit. And I was already out of bed and throwing on clothes. And he was like, I got to go to work. And I was like, what? You think I work at the local fast food? We didn't even shower. We just threw on clothes and ran to work. So he was working DOD as well. He was a Marine, and I had command, and we raced into work. And I have to tell you folks that one of the best things about being military at that time was we had a plan. Now, nobody ever planned for hitting the towers. Nobody ever thought that could have happened. And nobody could have predicted this coronavirus taking off and spreading as fast as it has. But these are external shocks that we now have to react to, and we have to lead through it. And that was so some of the things I'm going to talk about today in the next 14 minutes are some of the things that I learned during that time. So first off, we can only control what we can control. And this is in fact a virus crisis, whatever you want to call it. Whether or not you think it is overblown, out of control, whatever, it is what it is. We cannot change certain aspects of this. So if we can't change it, we just have to make the best of it. So what does that look like? Well, we as leaders have to get our people to take the right action. And if we want to have people take the right action, we have to embody that right action. We have to make sure that we are setting that example. And part of that means not panicking, not overreacting, not getting defensive, not getting upset. Is all this upsetting? Oh, sure. Right before we got on the call today, I shared with the other ladies that the rest of my June has pretty much been wiped out. And I might have one or two left, but right now people are not for sure. And between now and April, I can't even tell you how many jobs have gone away. So this is very upsetting, but we have to be able to help our people through this. And that means us being very calm, us being very strategic, us banding together and making sure we know how to lead people through this crisis. So if we're thinking about leading people, I've got a few tips that I thought might be helpful. First off, we have to acknowledge the problem and the effects that those problems are having on our people. Many people are wondering, am I going to have a job? Am I going to have a paycheck? How am I going to help my kids through school at home if I never understood algebra the first time myself? I mean, how am I supposed to do this? And then how am I supposed to work from home when I suddenly have kids at home or a spouse at home? And maybe I'm supposed to be working from home and I've got my computer, but all of a sudden my kids need the computer to get their schoolwork done. Well, maybe I can do my work late at night. Well, wait, my spouse has to have stuff late at night. Wait, we're not supposed to be seeing other people. What happens to all those appointments we had? So there's all of this uncertainty. Now, we all know uncertainty causes a lack of productivity, and we've also got a problem with fear. And people are fearful because, this is a scary thing. We don't know how fast this thing is going to spread. Regardless of the issue, whenever we're in any kind of crisis and we're trying to mitigate that crisis, we have to look at what the problem is, but not just the overall problem, but what the problem is for our people and our clients and our customers. And we have to be empathetic to what their perspective is. So even though some of us may be okay with what's going on and we're like, okay, we got this, we know how to handle that, we have to understand that for our people, it may not look the same as what it looks like for us. So number 2, ask what if questions. What if this happens? What if this potential happens? What if that happens? Ask for all the possibilities so that you can be prepared. What if? What if you go to postpone an event and the venue doesn't have space? What if you have to change towns? What if? And make sure you're basing your decisions on facts, not opinions, not emotions, not feelings. And talk it out with your team. Well, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? Contingency plans are all about the next course of action. So number 3, calmly figure out your strategic plan and your strategy with the team. Now, if you're in charge, of course, the buck kind of stops with you. You get to make the final decision, but making sure your people understand that they've got a place where they can voice their opinion. You get their opinion, you get their input, you map out what it is you need to do. You look at your policies, and in some cases, one of the best things, and I'm always looking for the silver lining, but one of the best things about this crisis, it brought to light that we've got some regulations in manufacturing that prevented us from manufacturing certain things that we probably could be manufacturing that would help us a lot at this point in time. And maybe those regulations will change. And you have to have support, and you have to not only support your people, you have to protect them from some external things. This is where I talk about you being the great umbrella. Make sure you're giving your people great information right away. Keep everybody informed all the time, even if you don't know stuff. People crave information. They crave the idea that they know what you know. And even if you don't know that much, you say, hey, I'm going to tell you everything I know, and keep your promise. When 9/11 broke out, my admiral at the time called a war room, and we had meetings at 7 o'clock every morning and 7 o'clock every night, and every single person showed up so that we had all the information he had, and we could relay it to our teams twice a day. And if anything else happened, he would call us over. And there were always face-to-face meetings, which is not always possible, but this is why video conferencing is so helpful, because we've got to keep people informed, and when we see their face, we can see their reaction, and it just makes it a whole lot easier. So as we get through that, then we have to implement our crisis communication action plan. So what does that look like? You need to communicate more than what you think you need to communicate. Most people, communication is like it's like driving. We all think we're better at it than we are. We're not. Most people would say, I'm an above average driver. No, you're not. You're an average communicator. You're an average driver. Communication methods are only effective if they're in place and people know where to get information and whether or not they can contact you. We need to reach out more, not less, to the people who are most important, to our clients, our customers, and especially our people. And we also need to make sure that we are communicating what we know when we know it, but be factual. If you don't know, say, hey, I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you right now, but I will get back to you in a week with what I do know. Give people something to hang on to. When we're talking to our external audiences, and by that I mean your clients, maybe your vendors, people you're working with, be as accurate and as timely as you possibly can be. And you've got to get your message out there. Yes, we've all gotten a bazillion messages from every restaurant we've ever visited in our life saying they're washing our hands. Well, what were they doing before is what we all kind of want to know. But be specific, stick to the facts, be honest, and be timely. And for sure, we know that action trumps fear. One of the reasons people are afraid is because they don't have anything to do. And this is where I felt sorry during 9/11 for my civilian friends, because they didn't feel as though they had any control over what to do next. They didn't have a contingency plan for stay home because we just don't know what happens next. We don't know if we're in danger. We don't know if there's another target or another plane or some other catastrophe ready to happen. And we do know that when we can take action, we have more control. We feel as though we've got a purpose. We can get focused. So give your people tasks to keep them focused, keep them on track, and break up some of those tasks so that your people get some small wins. Make that finish line a little bit closer so that people have a win and they can move forward. And then bonus, your attitude, your reassurance, your calmness, and your leadership is reassuring to other people. Your attitude matters. As I said, SEALs teach that calm is contagious. What is the very worst that can happen? We look at that and we say, what's the very worst that could happen? And then we go, okay, and if that happened, what would we do? And then that's that what if. And then we say, okay, so we have a plan for that too. So we all know that, remember, leaders respond to crises, and whether or not you are a leader or not, you are. You think sometimes you're not, but you are, because you're on this event with us today, and we are all leaders together, and we respond to things as soon as possible. We help our people as soon as possible, and we know that we have to make sure that anything we know gets transmitted to our people as quickly as possible, because that enhances trust. We know that great leaders step up, especially during times of uncertainty, because this is when leadership matters most. So I think that's my 15 minutes, and I will be available for questions at the end or anytime. Thanks, Beth. I did want to give everybody just some resources. I think I put the article, 5 Ways to Lead Through a Crisis, in Kiwi Live. Most of y'all I've worked with before, you know I use Kiwi Live for everything. Keyword is dog. Of course it's dog. And there's some other resources like how to do a strategic plan, how to do a business plan, some other stuff. I just threw a bunch of resources in there. So if that helps anybody, that is fantastic. I'm just going to address one of the other things that I saw in the chat, and that was, you know, how do we deal with employee morale during this time? Tara raised that the other day, and so did some other people, and I'm really grateful for that. And your reassurance, I call it pat, head, hold, paw. So I've got my 2 dogs sitting right here with me, and when they get nervous or the UPS truck shows up, they get a little nervous. So pat, head, hold, paw, and it calms them down. So we need to make sure that people understand moving forward that they are safe. Security is huge for most people, that their jobs are safe, that our events will happen, or whatever we know will happen. I will share with you that I went out to my team. I have a team of people who work with me, and one supports a couple other speakers. And 2 of those other speakers she supports said, hey, right now, when we don't have any business, I have no work for you. Well, all of a sudden, she's really stuck now. And she said, hey, and she was really sweet. And she said, I totally understand. I'm going to stop my screen share in case that helps. And she said, I totally understand if you need to not pay me. And I said, or, you know, if you have no work for me. And I said, let me make this really clear to you. I said, my amount that I'm paying you is not changing. And if we don't have any work, we can bank those hours for later when that work comes in. But I want to make sure you've got a secure monthly amount coming in, because you need to pay your bills. You need to be able to budget, and you need to be able to move forward. And she was like, oh my gosh, that's such a big relief. Well, it hadn't even crossed my mind that I wouldn't pay her. But I need to practice what I say and make sure that I'm seeing things through other people's perspective. And yes, we have embraced the idea that it's okay to say, I don't know. And there's Jess. Jess is back. And so you need to unmute yourself and I will mute me. And if you've got questions for me, folks, I'm here for you.
So I'm going to add my little piece. I'm not having my own little 15-minute things, but I did have 3 pieces I wanted to talk to you about regarding remote working. Number 1, passwords. We're so used to working in the same office. We've got the sticky notes with the passwords on the one computer. Everybody knows the passwords. If you are now a remote office, don't use the same passwords. What I want you to do is use a tool called LastPass. You set up an account and then you can share the passwords without sharing the passwords. Do not pass them back and forth through email. Do not text them to each other. Do not. Everybody can have LastPass and share the passwords without having to actually share the passwords. So that's remote working tip number 1 from your nerdy best friend. And now on to Jess. Let me tell you about Jess Pettit. Speakers are funny people. We have our own conference, the National Speakers Association Conference. And at the National Speakers Association Conference, if you are a speaker who is speaking to speakers, you get a standing ovation. That is just it. If you get up there and say anything, the exits are over there, you get a standing ovation. That's what we do. But Jess Pettit spoke for 5 minutes in this little itty bitty segment on the main stage. There were 3,000 or so very professional speakers in the room who were ready to give everybody a standing ovation, but no, she got a true standing ovation for what she said to us and how she said it and how she made us think differently. And to this day, people come up to her and say, I remember when you were up on that stage. I remember what you were talking about. It has changed what I do. She impressed speakers, and that is a thing. Little fun fact about Jess Pettit. 2 fun facts. Number 1, she and I were both in Peace Corps. We grew up probably 20 miles from each other in Texas, and neither one of us knew that at all until we started hanging out together. So that's kind of fun. Number 2, Arnold Schwarzenegger taught her to play chess. I'm going to let you ask her about that later on after this conference. For right now, I want her to talk about dealing with conflict. Go.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. And fun fact, my dad was a bodybuilder powerlifter. So Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno were like my dad's friends. I didn't know they were a big deal until watching Conan O'Brien one day while we were passing a gallon of Bluebell ice cream around. And I literally was leaning against his shins and was like, why are you on TV? It's very strange. Anyway, I have a very weird life, which has led me to have a lot of weird conversations. So what I thought I would share with us today is when I have been talking with my clients that have their, 2-3 years of their work decimated, and not to mention my calendar also, shall we say, slightly more open. I think my closets are going to be very clean very soon. Maybe, we'll see, because now I have to make my own structure up, right? What I've realized is that conflict avoidance is not only a skill related to diversity, equity, and inclusion work, but it is very much deeply rooted in how we care for one another, how we listen to one another. So coming off of Mary's content, your attitude and your preparation to engage in a pandemic that none of us are ever prepared for is the exact same skill set that it takes to tell your best friend they have spinach in their teeth. Most people don't believe me, but I'm going to walk you through a very simple process. So the first thing that you need to know is that no one is really prepared for what is happening right now, right? So while I've been talking to clients or doing my own consulting work, I've been trying to remind everyone that you are so worried about having the perfect response and the perfect question and the perfect way to deal with an angry sponsor or a vendor or a supplier that's upset. Instead of worrying about being perfect, don't lose sight of the fact that you are probably doing a good job. Most people right now are trying to figure out how to mandatorily homeschool people. That is not a skill set that everybody has. excuse me, not a good time to be coughing. Now we're all writing judgments and assumptions about my cough. So let's talk about that too, because that's important. The content that Beth is referencing and that some people are talking about in the chat box is, as a diversity trainer and educator, I had been told for years that you were never, ever, 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 ever supposed to make judgments and assumptions because it makes you a terrible, horrible person. But then how are you supposed to be prepared? How are you supposed to have a creative or innovative conversation? Again, citing back to Mary's content, is that we need to be having creative and innovative conversations pre-crisis so that in the middle of a crisis, we kind of know what to do. Some of you are like, well, thanks, we're a little late for that. So most of the time that we have what is really a difficult or a challenging conversation are after we needed them. So they're reactive, but we don't actually position that conversation in a way to be reactive to the thing that led to the conversation, but it's proactive because you are building and practicing skills for the next time. So when we start talking about judgments and assumptions, it's not that you are never supposed to make them. It is that you are supposed to be responsible for the ones that you make. Your life has taught you what makes you feel safe, what makes you feel prepared, and that is the story that we write. Part of the reason that I think so many of the meeting professionals and vendors and suppliers that I'm working with, as well as HR managers, et cetera, who are having very challenging conversations with their employees right now, part of it is that you don't necessarily know what judgments and assumptions they have made about you. You do not have a workplace culture that is deeply rooted in having creative and innovative and challenging conversations without a crisis. And your own lived experience has already taught you what to do and how to be and how to navigate the organizational style and the actual workplace structure with everybody that was in place prior to COVID-19. What I'm going to ask you to do is not format the hard drive, but is to actually realize that you do this. I do this so that I feel safe and prepared. Marquessa does it, Beth does it, Mary does it. Every single one of us makes judgments and assumptions about other people so that we know how to show up and feel safe and prepared. But that doesn't mean we're right. What it means is that that is how our lived experience has taught us to feel the most prepared. And then what we need to do is leave room for edits. It's not delete the story, but it's print the story off, triple spaced with extra wide margins, and then listen. Actually enter an interaction with someone as if we're going to make a better connection. On the news this morning, everybody's talking about how we need to be listening and we need to be empathetic and we need to be understanding. But the reality is that we are, or at least a lot of us, I will include myself, we unknowingly fell down a couple levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs because my income is questionable. People I deeply care about, their lives are in question right now. People's jobs are in peril. I do some consulting work for the United States Bartenders Guild. So anybody who owns a winery, a restaurant, a bar, this is obviously impacting a huge amount of people. But the bartenders are just as much at risk as the first responders that I work with. And the reality is none of us know what our jobs are when we're in a grocery store. And now due to social isolation, we don't even have those labels. So what I'm going to ask us to do is to be responsible for the stories that we write, print them out, and then listen and connect. So making better connections is actually one of the most important pieces I think I have ever done. In my research and how I pulled it together, there'll be a handout that we hand out virtually because Beth's going to do some whiz bang fancy PDF thing that I don't understand. But it's real simple and it's a flow chart. It's page 192 in my book. But the idea is when I read difficult conversations, fierce conversations, crucial conversations, and courageous conversations, all of them really get to a point, if I can generalize them together, about the sender and the receiver and where miscommunication happens. So what I want to do is talk about that miscommunication, but like a truffle, I want to ganache layer it with our fear of conflict, our fear of the unknown, our inability to go into a conversation fully confident that we know what to say, how to say it, and how to shut up and listen. The key thing that was missing from those 4 books, in my opinion, is that we need to consciously and energetically make a decision that I am going to improve the connection I have with this person I'm about to engage with. Now, caveat, you are not guaranteed a conversation partner. They are not necessarily going to be like, oh, I read that book, let me look at my handout. No, you don't even need another person to do this. This is about you and you being able to actually engage in a conversation and work on your own skills and take responsibility for the stories that you are writing, okay? So when we decide, I'm going to make a better connection, let's say that, hypothetically speaking, we're allowed to be in public and we are at a coffee shop and we're about to order our beverage. Remember when soy chai lattes weren't things that I made? They're like sandwiches now. They just taste better when someone else makes them. I'm 4 days into social isolation and I miss my barista. Okay, so that's over. If I decide I'm going to make a better connection, even in a webinar platform where there's like little back and forth engagement, when I decide I want this to be a better connection, I'm entering in a very different way. Then I want to be right. I want to get my message out. Let me tell you something. If that's how you're entering a conversation, you're not coming from a place of empathy and listening. When we are scared because we know that we're going to have to tell somebody we're canceling our event, we are going to lose thousands, if not millions of dollars. Some associations, some businesses right now are not going to reopen after this. That is a reality. I'm not diminishing and I'm not minimizing that fear. And you still need to have a conversation. So what do? First thing, you decide you are going to make a better connection. With that kind of font posture, your head up, and you've decided that you're going to try to make a better connection, then you start having an intentional conversation. Most of those other books that you reference start at intentional conversation, but I think you need the posture in order to know that a conversation is potentially two-way, that there's some intention there, and that we often talk about intention versus impact in diversity, equity, and inclusion work, but we tend to mostly focus on impacts, but we don't start at that intention. So the second step is making an intentional conversation out of what you're about to have. Now it's not conflict, and it's not like an icky thing you don't know how to talk about or say, but what it ends up becoming is like, we're just gonna engage in a conversation. None of us know what's going on right now. Okay, so that settles down your nerves a little. And then some of you are getting nervous because you're like, I still don't know what to say. Don't worry. Step number 3 is listen to others as if they're wise. Now, we all work with that person. I usually refer to them as Todd. Todd's not wise and I don't want to listen to him. I don't even want to be on the same planet with him, but I'm already coexisting with him and that's enough. Okay, so maybe not Todd, maybe other people. Can you listen to people as if they are wise? Enter a conversation as if you're wrong. Enter a conversation as if you're about to learn some information. One of my clients had to cancel a 300-person event and was very nervous about how to do this. We created an apology statement and we worked through a script and we did some role playing. I hate role playing. They called the hotel and the hotel was like, I'm so glad you called. I don't know how to tell you this, but we have to cancel your event. Well, this particular organizer was like, oh, tell me more, because they had entered the conversation prepared to cancel or postpone the event, but instead the venue ended up having to do it. They wouldn't have done that or known that information if they hadn't provided the space to listen first. If you enter a conversation as if you're wrong, you're going to be listening in a way that you're going to learn something. That goes back to leaving room for edits. Listening to others as if they know information you don't know is generally how conversations work. Otherwise, you're literally just exchanging content, and that's not fun. So really consciously make a better connection. You're going to have an intentional conversation. Step 1, big time, is shut up and listen. Where are they coming from? How are they doing? I did a webinar this morning with several thousand people on it. And the first thing I wanted to say was like, how's it going? That we should be centering our humanness in our conversation, not our agenda. Once you have listened and you have determined where the person you're about to connect with is coming from, then and only then do you begin to form your message. You form the message and the emotions, the content, the ideas, the needs, the questions. You form that message so that you are conscious of what kind of information you're trying to exchange. They've started, they've laid the foundation for you, and you listen to that. Now you are going to form. When you form your message, then you are very clear about the intention of the meaning of the message. That does not guarantee that that is how it's going to land. That does not guarantee the impact of your intention, no matter how nicely you formed your message. But if you've ever, possibly this is relevant, but if you've ever been broken up with or felt that you lost an argument, hypothetically speaking, let's take my relationship with my husband. I win every single argument with him 4 days later because I have replayed the transcript in my head over and over and over again. I changed how I say things. I changed things because now I know what's coming. Boom, I know what I'm doing. I'm editing a transcript without the conversation partner in order to feel like I win. That is not actually making a better connection, and it's actually lying to myself. What I need to do is form the message, be clear on what my intention is. Then you can send it out there. When you send it out there, you know what your intention was. So then you can actually claim or potentially reclaim responsibility for it not going well. Claim or reclaim responsibility for it going well. Both are important, but you are now clear on your intention. You took the time to actually form what you were trying to say. So when you lobbed it out there, you're not as defensive or shocked by it landing inaccurately or incongruently with your expectations. And you can also really take note of like, that worked. We are closer now. We are having a conversation now. This is good. So Beth and I are really good friends, and we recently roomed together at a conference, which was very exciting. And Beth, I like to call her my conflict avoidant friend. And I'm sure she calls me a bulldozer or something when I'm not around, because she'd never say it to my face because she's conflict avoidant. But I love her to pieces. And we had a thing that we needed to talk about. And I am not comfortable pretending that we don't have a thing that we need to talk about. And it involved a third person. It was no big deal. And I had been texting with Beth, and I was like, by the way, you keep dodging this subject. And she's like, sure do. And I'm like, well, self-awareness, step one. Okay, great. Now we're rooming together. So before we actually go to sleep, we need to put this on the table. We need to have a conversation about it. And I have no way of knowing how Beth feels or doesn't feel about it, but I'm not comfortable pretending that's not a thing, because my job as my role of a friend is to make sure that we're going to have a better connection, right? So then I knew why I was forming the message. I paid attention to the intention that I had, and I was fully responsible. If she dodges this topic in person, then take a hint. She doesn't want to talk about it. But instead, I believe, and we'll find out from her later because she doesn't know I'm talking about this, but I believe because I formed my message, I knew what my intention was, and I was prepared to be responsible if she was like, hello, how many times do I need to tell you I don't want to talk about this? That created a space for us to have a conversation about this third person that was between the two of us. It doesn't impact our friendship in any way. It let the little gas out that needed to get out, and we have a better connection for it. The third person is wrong. Boom. High five to my friend Beth. Done. When you claim or reclaim the responsibility, you're reclaiming it if you've been told that you've done this before. You're reclaiming it if it's the same person who's like, stop doing that again, right? I grew up in Texas, so I am under the impression that Texans cuss. But the only reason why I know that is because I'm a Texan and I learned how to cuss from my grandmother. I didn't know it was bad. Then I got a job where I'm supposed to be speaking on stages, and I had to find out that you are not allowed to cuss in front of people. So now I have this arrangement. The higher amount of Spanx I have on, the fewer cuss words I use. This is how this rolls. Now, the reason why this is important is that after speaking on stages over and over and over and over again, I think what ended up happening is that I was getting feedback that like, your content is great, and I'm still completely frozen at your word choice before because you cussed. You can't do that. So then I eventually had to change how I speak so that I could connect with my audiences. That's important. So claiming and reclaiming responsibility for the impact, whether it's positive, negative, congruent, or incongruent, it doesn't matter. That is a super important piece. Then the last thing, and before we get to it, I do think it's really funny, is that there is typing going on in the chat room from Jessica Pettit, except I'm not typing, which again is evidence that I gave out the wrong link, and I'm super Sorry for all of you. Okay, so, but I'm claiming responsibility for that. See? Whoops. Okay, so after you have reclaimed responsibility, we got 2 more steps to go in the little flow chart. Reclaimed responsibility for the impact that was congruent or incongruent, positive or negative, from your intended message that you intentionally formed after listening to people because you want to have an intentional conversation, because ultimately it will lead to a better connection. Next step is what just happened. What I mean by that, funny title of this particular webinar, what just happened? Make meaning about this. So you know by the little hairs on your neck if that made it your connection better or it made your connection worse. You're responsible for it either way. I'm not going to buy into like everybody's 50% in. That is not true. I am 100% responsible for myself. I don't need nobody's help to be that 50% responsible for me. Did that work out good? Did that work out bad? When you are able to make a meaning from a conversation, you can then adjust accordingly to then acknowledge what is the impact on your connection. When you make a connection that is better, it will be deeper and it'll be more real. It is a big assumption when I use this example of Beth and I in a hotel room and she didn't know I was going to do that. And 4 days of staying together in a conference, a hotel room where I snore and get nosebleeds. I am a very sexy roommate. It is important to know that I feel closer in my friendship with my roommate and friend Beth because we were able to clear the air and I was able to make a better connection. So selfishly, I felt better. And I provided the space to find out if that was accurate. Is this true? Is our connection even better? So what I think is super important to understand is that when you recognize first, you are not guaranteed a conversation partner. You can do this by yourself. And when you are aware that you are intentionally going to try and make a better connection and take responsibility no matter what happens, when you engage in these super challenging conversations that we're having, I am so grateful that I do not have children for a million reasons. And now we're going to add another one, is that I don't have to be the person who's talking to a kid about how I have no idea what's happening and what's going on and how long it's going to last. I don't have to have that conversation with anyone. You have to have conversations all the time that you don't like to call conflict, but you call them like deep conversations. And the reality is that we have conflict only in the conversations we don't want to have, and we have competency in the conversations we do want to have. But if we consciously decide we are going, no matter what, to make a better connection this time, then that to me is good enough. And by being good enough now, what my final mantra is, and I'm going to pitch it back to Beth, is to do the best you can with what you got some of the time. Do the best you can with what you got some of the time. It's better than nothing never. That is good enough now. So, Beth, thank you for letting me go through my fancy flowchart.
Yay for your fancy flowchart. Before I get into the whole airing our dirty laundry, I just want you to know that we need to talk about that. I kind of need to point out, though, that all you would have had to do was give me the candy bar that you gave me anyway, and everything would have been all right forever. That's like my standard for, is there a problem? Is there candy? There is no problem. It's just kind of like that. Back to a couple of my tips that I wanted to share. I actually got a question from somebody else. For those of you who don't know me, my whole thing is technology and helping people with tech tools. I'm your nerdy best friend. And so I'm always checking out tech tools. Somebody asked about a VPN now that we're working at home. So a VPN is a virtual private network. And if you are working at home, first off, a VPN is really never a bad idea. A VPN will create a tunnel for information to travel through rather than having it being blasted over an internet connection and maybe being overheard, overseen by bad guys. In a public situation, you never want to have a lack of a VPN. You always want to use a VPN in an airport, in your Starbucks, but we're not going to those places. So you're using a VPN at home. I have my router has security systems in it. It's through Xfinity. It has security systems in it that will get bad actors from being able to connect to our system. And when I visit a site that is dangerous, it will actually block it. It's kind of annoying sometimes because it's not dangerous. And I know this, it sells chocolate, so it's fine, but it doesn't matter. It'll block it. So at home, I don't use a VPN. So if your router is just your plain Jane router and it doesn't have any security, and you're working with stuff from work, or you're on any kind of shared Wi-Fi, go ahead and get one of those VPNs. Now I use Nord VPN. It's Nord VPN. By the way, the handouts that I'm going to give you are excerpts from my book on a couple of these areas. So you'll get all kinds of different tech tools there. I use Nord. ExpressVPN gets a little bit higher rating. Nord is usually in the top 5. ExpressVPN is almost always over it, but it was a little bit more expensive and you had to buy it per machine. So I got Nord, which includes 6. And I think it's like, gosh, I paid for 3 years at once. Maybe it was $70 a year, $50 a year. Whatever it is, it wasn't very expensive. So I use it on the road. I don't use it at home, but if you are in any kind of shared network or if you have no security, it's always a good idea and it's never a bad idea. All right. I am going to turn it over in just a second. No, I'll do it now. I'll maybe answer one of my questions later, do the last one. But let me tell you about the woman I keep calling Contessa Marquesa. I call her that because she's fantastic, and a Contessa. She does have a tiara. She did not wear it today. But I am your nerdy best friend. She is the queen of Zoom. The queen of Zoom. The format we are using right now to video conference and do this webinar is Zoom, and she is the master. She has taught herself all kinds of tips and tricks. And I know some stuff. I don't know all the stuff. She knows all the stuff. So not only is she a fantastic keynote speaker, but she has created this level of expertise that everybody wants. And so we have asked her to share her expertise on so many of you, and all of us speakers are dealing with this. They're like, okay, well, the event's canceled, so we're going to take it virtual. What does that mean? And how is it different? It's way different. So she's going to give us some tips on that. Let me tell you a little fast fact about her, though. By the way, you'll get the formal bios in the little packet I'm sending. So, you can read that stuff. But the best fact about her is out there, I know there are people out there who watch reality TV and don't tell anybody because you're a small amount embarrassed. Well, Contessa Marquesa not only is not embarrassed about her reality TV, she used to be a writer for commenting on Real Housewives reality TV. Yes, she gave color commentary in the form of writing about that very topic, and she is proud of it, as she should be. So she is going to share with you how, if you're considering doing a live event that has to be canceled and turning it into a virtual experience, what does that look like? Go.
All right. Thank you so much, Beth and Mary and Jess. Thank you. And yes, I am not ashamed that I love the Real Housewives. Yay. All right. I cannot wait to talk to you guys about something that's so important. And what that is your employees need you. Your team needs you. Your managers need you. So we have a favor. I have a favor to ask you. Do not cancel your meetings or uncancel your meetings. And what I want to do with my 15 minutes is share with you why this is possible. Right now, we're living in a time, I don't want to get into the whole situation because I'm sure you can turn on the news and see it, but we still need each other. We have employees that are looking for direction. We have leaders that want that confidence. We have team members that just want to talk. So why not use the virtual world to make that happen? So I'm curious, you guys are in chat right now. So do me a favor, write in chat. There should be somewhere for you to raise your hand. If you've gotten something out of this virtual smart meeting so far, just raise your hand. Or if you can't find it, Say, yes, I have. I've gotten something out of this. And then I want to take it a step further. If you want to share what's one action you're going to take as a result of something you heard. So thank you, Kia. Kia raised her thumb. Author said, yes, I have. Pam says, yes, I have. Keep it coming. So if you got something out of this, Loretta said, yes. Okay, you'll find the, okay, good, good. Thank you. Yes, so move your mouse over the bottom of the screen and you'll find it. Donna says, listen. See, Jessica, you taught Donna how to listen. We got, yes, definitely. Yes, I'm going. So here's the thing. What did I just do? You guys know what I just did? I just had a conversation and I can't see you. This is the power of virtual meetings. So the first thing I want to do is just remind you that you can do any type of formatted meeting on this platform. So I'm just curious, do you have board meetings, town hall meetings, conversations with coworkers, demonstrations, trainings, workshops, seminars, panels? Is this familiar with anyone? I'm just wondering. Yeah. So there is no reason for you to stop your productivity. And the thing about Zoom, guys, honestly, and I've told this to Jess a few times and she just laughs at me, and Beth too. If Zoom was a man, I'd be married by now, because it gives you everything you need, literally, okay? It gives you the productivity piece. So if you do not mind, I want to take you a little bit, without getting too techie, into why Zoom, frankly, and it's just my opinion and I'm not getting paid for it, Zoom is the only platform for you. And again, I'm not an ambassador for Zoom. I use it, I've used it for years and it works. And when you leave here, I want you to call up Jess, Mary, I see Marilyn Sherman on here who's a major keynote speaker. I see Gary Rifkin on here who's a major keynote speaker. I want you to call these folks. I want you to say, now I know we had a conversation a few days ago and we had to cancel, but now we'd like to put it back on because that Marquesa, that Zoom Queen girl, convinced us that we can make this happen, all right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share my screen really quickly and I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna show you the possibilities of Zoom. Okay, so I'm gonna go into my settings here, there we go. So you guys can see my screen right here, right? Just to let you know, if you're thinking, what's one action you can take when you leave here? Because I know you're gonna run and you're gonna get a Zoom account. So first of all, run and get a Zoom account. You can do it for free, but I recommend you pay for it. And the lowest cost is $15. But either way, run and jump on it, have a meeting, do whatever you can. The second thing I want you to do is go in here and go to something called settings. I'm gonna put on the spotlight real quick, so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. There is a tool in the control panel that says annotate, and it's a spotlight. So I'm gonna put on the spotlight so you guys can follow me. So when you look right here in settings, look at all these choices I have to make. Look at this. Look at all these choices. Now, what you may care about is, do I want the chat open so that my employees can chat with each other or chat with me? You decide. It's like driving a car. I do live in New York City, so it's been a minute since I've owned the car. Those were the days, and now we just sort of, put our hand up and a car will come, or we have this big thing called a subway. But just like a car, you can decide what you want on it and what you do not want on it. And Zoom is very similar. How about files? Do you ever have files you need to share with somebody else in your office? You can do that right through Zoom. Maybe you want to poll your employees and ask them, how many of you want to come into the office every day at 8 a.m.? Whatever the case may be. You can do polls. You can also share your screen, kind of like I'm doing right now. Here's something else too. Right now, guys, we're in what's called a Zoom webinar. And what I invite you to do is try Zoom meetings. Now, I know a question may be, what's the difference between a Zoom webinar and a Zoom meeting? How do I choose? I have one answer for you. It depends on the experience you want to give your attendees. It depends on the experience you want to give your attendees. So if the experience is, hey, we want to share with them wonderful strategies or information, kind of like today. We had Mary Kelly calm us down, help us sort of reorganize ourselves so that we can face what we're doing right now as leaders, right? We had Jess that came on to help us with conflict, because there's probably going to be even more conflict than ever. And then we have Beth sharing her nerdy tips and me sharing how to have a strong virtual meeting. So in this format, a webinar made sense. And the benefits of that is Beth can now follow up with everyone, send you the notes, the chats, the videos, and it was easy for every single person to register. So in this situation, it made sense. But let's say that you had, I don't know, maybe 50 people, and you can really go as high as you want, but I'd recommend 50 or less be your sweet spot. That would be a good time to have what we would call a Zoom meeting. Why? Because now you get a chance to see everybody's faces. So look at this. I'm in the back end here. I'm sharing, again, the settings. I have a choice. If I'm in a Zoom meeting right now, I have a choice now where I can ask everyone to show their faces, which is a really big deal. I also have a choice whether I want a meeting room. So let me back up a little bit. I know you're thinking meeting room, also known as a waiting room. When I have a Zoom meeting with my members, or I have a Zoom meeting with my staff, one of the things that I love to do is ask them all right, I want you guys to all come on, and then what I will do is meet with a certain group at a certain time. So let's say from 1 to 2, I meet with a certain group of employees, and then from 2 to 3, and so on and so forth. The beauty of the waiting room is you always have an employee that shows up early. You know who they are, right? You do not want that employee that shows up early to interrupt the rhythm that's going on. You put them in the waiting room, and what's so cool about this, look at this, guys. In the waiting room, I can click this little arrow and I can put a little message. That way I feel like a doctor too. It says, I'm so glad you're here. Please hold tight and I'll let you in. You can put your company logo right there. Now, it would take me way more than 15 minutes to go through every single thing here. But my purpose of showing you this is how simple it is to have a virtual meeting. You can also do a virtual background. If I wanted to, I can take you guys to Hawaii right now, but I'll show off at the end. Remind me, Beth, to take them to Hawaii right before I get off. You can do, I can put a company's name behind me. I can put, if I'm having a town hall meeting and we have a theme, I can put that behind me. But the beauty of it all is I can do all of this by creating my settings or setting my settings in the back end. Now, here's a piece of advice. Do not go in here and go crazy. Otherwise, you will have a large meeting and you will have no idea how everything works. So I would try it. The lovely thing about Zoom, guys, see this right here? It's called resources. See that drop down arrow? Right here, you see something called video tutorials, live training, webinars and events, Zoom blog FAQs. Zoom answers your questions in written format, short little videos, long training, whatever you need is all right here. It's so easy. So I'm going to stop sharing real quick. And then here is something else I want to help you think about. I know you're thinking, all right, Marquez, I get it. I need Zoom. But I'm not quite sure the different ways that I can meet with my team on Zoom. So I want to give you some of those. Here's an example of what you can do. Have you ever heard of a hot seat? So what that means is if I was in a Zoom meeting right now, and let's say the 4 of us were on and it's Mary Kelly's time and I want to put her in the hot seat, I would literally, I'm not going to do it, Mary, don't worry. I would literally put my mouse over Mary Kelly's Zoom window, and then I would put her in a hot seat and I would pin her video. That way, everyone that's participating in the meeting will see Mary Kelly and hear everything she has to say. So that's the beauty of a virtual meeting. What about a discussion? Do we ever need to talk to each other? Maybe if you have a group of, I don't know, let's try 20. I need it to be an even number, make the math easier. Let's say that you have a Zoom meeting of at least 20 of your team members. Let's say 20 leaders. And you need the leaders to discuss what's going on in their environment. And let's assume that the topics include handling difficult employees, I don't know, bringing in food, you know, all these important leadership topics. One of the things you can do on Zoom is, as the host, you can break off all your leaders into breakouts. So what was my number? It was 20. So maybe I do 4 breakout groups. 5, yeah, that's 5, 15. Yep, that's 5 person per breakout room. The beautiful thing about Zoom, I don't have to know math. They would do all the breakout rooms for me. And as the CEO or the president, you can pop your head into the breakout rooms to see how everybody is doing. Yes, you can do everything. So again, you can have discussions. You can also do a deep dive. You can bring in someone like a Jess to help you break down conflict and figure out why can't we just get along with each other? And Jess can share her slides if she has slides. She can share different parts of her book. Then you may say, but you know what? Not only do we want Jess on there, we also want Beth to come in and talk to us about how to use apps and how to be more technically savvy, okay? So then again, that's a deep dive. Expert interview. You may decide, you know what? We need to bring in someone outside the company. You can bring them in. What about a round robin? Everyone wants to be heard. Every single week, guys, I have a virtual meeting. And during my virtual meeting, I have quite a few attendees, and it can be as many as 70. Now, I did say 50, but I've been doing this for a long time, so I pushed the envelope. 70 folks. Now, we can't hear from 70 people, but I will ask a question and ask, I'm in New York City, guys, so you're gonna hear noise. Let's say that 5 people will decide that they want to share in the discussion. We call that round robin. So each person will raise their hand and they're able to share whatever their comment is. So that's an example of a round robin. And then the last thing I want to share in that whole list would be behind the curtains. Something that I love to do that I find that virtual audiences love is for you to, oh my gosh, I did it earlier. I went behind the scenes and I showed you what it looked like in my settings. That's an example of behind the curtains. Bottom line is, you can either decide we're not gonna meet and we're just gonna sort of wait around and see what happens, or you can be proactive and make a decision. You know what? We're humans, we have lives, we serve a purpose in our company and in our business. So you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna meet, but we're gonna do this a little differently. Set up a Zoom meeting. What do you have to lose? And bring everyone together. We have professional speakers. There's a lot of them that are attending this. There's several of us that are right here. We have the skills. Bring us in, let us share, let us help you figure this stuff out. But do not stop live meetings. Just change them up a little bit. I'm sure there are a lot of questions here. I do have a Zoom cheat sheet that'll have quite a few things on it, just so in case you're thinking, what should I do first in terms of meetings? Where should I go? It can get really techie. My only goal here was to help you see the realm of possibilities when it comes to meeting virtually and using Zoom to make that happen. Yay! I don't know how long I went, Beth. How's the clock? I have no idea. You gonna unmute yourself? Talk to me. Let me know how am I doing?
Oh, dang the clock. We're doing what we needed to do. And I think we're gonna finish even a little bit earlier than I was fearing. Boy, you put 4 speakers together and we all want to say stuff. Imagine that.
I'll give them this here before they leave.
Again, you're going to get resources. You're going to get bonus resources from all of us. I wanted to give you one last set of tips now that we have talked about Zoom a little bit. I want to talk to you about 3 different things that are critical when you are doing these events. Number 1, and some of us did it and some of us didn't. I'm not going to point out who, but one of the things that drives me crazy is that frequently when we're in video conferences, we end up talking like this because this is where the videos are, or we have multiple monitors and we're over there. Find your camera, wherever it is on your screen, minimize everybody else if you're having a conversation, and put them underneath that camera. So that way, even if your eyes are a little bit lower, they're still straight ahead rather than facing toward your other screens or down at the bottom. Make sure you make that eye contact, especially when you're having a small meeting. Second and third things are camera and audio. Guess what? Amazon is completely selling out of the Logitech 920 little camera that I have here. They were there 3 days ago. Right now, they're almost nowhere. So get yourself, wait till they come back in stock. They will. Get yourself a good external camera. I'm not going to switch back and forth from my camera to, maybe I should. Nah. I won't switch back and forth to show you the difference, but it's insane the difference when you look at the different cameras and audio. I have a special audio device. I think it was like $65 or something like that. You don't have to use that. You can use your AirPods. You can use something with a mic. Do not use the very basic audio and video that come with your laptop. Upgrade it just a little bit and it will make a huge difference in how well you can communicate. What camera am I using? I'm reading it right now. It's the Logitech 920 series. There's a couple of series, but Logitech is kind of, I think Contessa Marcressa, you use the same ones for yours.
Yes, I do Logitech.
Logitech, yep. So they've been around for a while. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and show you because this is important. I'm going to use the FaceTime camera versus the Pro webcam. Hey, look, I changed color and not in a good way. I'm also going to use my internal microphone instead of my blue snowball. Now, how do I sound? It's called horrible. Make sure you upgrade your audio, your video, and give that upgrade a chance because you're going to make a big difference. When I have the headphones on, it's great for meetings. Let me go back to this. I have a better look now. We hope you have enjoyed this today. I thank our panelists. We have wonderful people here. I'm Beth at yournerdybestfriend.com. If you have questions, we have Jess at goodenoughnow.com. Marquesa, I don't know yours off the bat, but it's Mary at productiveleaders.com, and I know people have been sharing that. So thank you to everyone who has joined us. We wish everybody the best of health. And there is now a Bitmoji that says wash your hands. So that is the lesson I'm going to leave you with. Thanks so much.